Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have concerns or seeking a diagnosis or treatment, please seek individual advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks associated with acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride.
Please drink responsibly and in moderation. Before drinking, please be sure to be of the legal drinking age for your country. We do not encourage the misuse of alcohol.
Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant. All right,
I had to take a sip of my drink. I was about to cough, and I was like, no, not now.
Don't worry, I'm still drinking my cayenne drink, so when I get there, I'm going to be like...
No, it's going to help you. All that spice is going to help you burn calories.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they tell us.
And green tea, they always say, too. Green tea, they sell green tea pills.
Yeah, why not just drink the tea? I like green tea better than black tea.
So it's interesting. I did look this up if there was any studies on it. And what I don't know if this is like crazy, but what I could find is in studies, there was a slight improvement of burning calories with green tea in Asian people. And I was like, because, the Asian culture's green tea is usually, so I don't know, but that's what I remember finding when I was trying to find some real actual research and data on it.
Interesting. Fun facts. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't tell you about the concert. So I went to go see Violent Femmes.
Oh, yes. Well, you told me you were going, but you didn't tell me how it was.
So Violent Femmes, for those young people listening.
Oh, my God.
Well, here's the thing. Even people of our age might not know. So they first came out in the mid-80s, and then they had this resurgence in the mid-90s where sometimes it was cool to be weird, and they were weird.
It's always cool to be weird.
But you know what I mean? That was a thing, and they were very different and weird. They're a folk punk rock band that literally spans styles from sounds like Appalachian folk music to real classic rock. Their songs literally span all of that. There's this album that I listened to was the best of them that came out in the 90s, and the songs are so all over the place. A couple of our friends were into them back then. I think Laura definitely was like, oh, you know that song, Blister in the Sun? I remember her telling me, trying to explain it and sing it to me, and me what song is that? And then Sue, I remember we were driving to cheerleading camp or cheerleading competition with Stacy, who's a year older than us. Can't remember her last name, and she played the CD in the car. And
in my head, I'm like, it's Stacey Carosi. No, it's not Stacey Carosi.
And I remember hearing it and then eventually buying the CD myself. I have to tell you, the two original band members, the bassist and the lead singer, he is 62 years old, this lead singer. He rocked his butt off for more than 2 hours. He was amazing. And he played multiple string instruments throughout. He played a banjo, mandolin, a violin, and a electric guitar. It was
nice.
You didn't know what he was going to do. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was a really good people watching.
Awesome.
Because if you kind of know that they're weird and they've spanned generations, so there are people who have different ages and quirky, it was really good.
The amount of people who were high there was probably a lot. So
yeah, I mean, it was in Count Basie Theater, so it's not somewhere where you can really do that openly. But
it's legal. You can do it anywhere you want.
Not in public spaces like that. No smoking. No.
If you're vaping, no, unless someone comes up and takes your vape.
Well, toward the end, as I was walking out, I did smell a little something, but throughout the show I didn't, because this is a real theater, people.
Theater.
But it was a lot of fun.
The Count Basie Theater.
They played all the good stuff, all the songs. They even had the husband bopping around a bit. So
nice.
It was good. It was
Let
fun.
me go on.
Yes.
I got the stir in the sun. Let me go on. Okay.
We used to say, instead of big hands, you're the Sue
Yes.
hands, Maybe Sue's listening. Anyway, so that was my exciting. I stayed out past 10 o'clock, on a weekend.
Wow, dirty stay up.
On a Monday night.
A Monday night shenanigans. Who would believe it?
Oh my goodness.
Well, we're going to have a long day on Saturday, so buckle up, girl.
I know. I need my rest before then. I need to go to bed early, get those hours in.
Yes, but do serve cocktails there, so
I know.
we'll get to imbibe.
Not too much, though. I need to make it home.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
All right. What do you got for us today?
What do I have? I have all the things for you today. Today, my cocktail is, I asked your boyfriend to make a cocktail for me, and he told me to go F off. So then I went to my bestie, Google AI, chat GPT.
Is that a she, maybe? Maybe?
Google AI, yeah. She is your girl, and she'll get you what you need in a pinch. So she created for me what she is calling, and I am also calling, the Tranquillum cocktail, or the Tranquillum Tonic. So the drink is inspired by the serene-yet-sinister aesthetic of the Tranquillum House retreat in the show 9 Perfect Strangers. The calming blue hue, as you can see, suggests wellness and healing, but the potent kick and subtle bitterness reflect the unsettling methods of wellness guru Masha Dimitrichenko. I knew I was going to say her name wrong the first time. So the Tranquillum Tonic contains 2 ounces of vodka, ½ ounce of blue curacao, ½ ounce elderflower liqueur like Saint Germain, a ½ ounce of lemon juice, 1 dash of Angostura bitters, 2 ounces of sparkling water, and then a sprig of rosemary, which I did have. He's in there somewhere. And dried butterfly pea flower petals on top, which I also put in. Didn't change the color. I'm sick of these freaking petals telling me they're going to change color every time.
We're like, the butterfly pea has been...
I've tried them so many times and it never works for me. So if a listener out there knows what we're doing wrong, please tell us, because we've really tried to make color-changing cocktails and it's not working for us. So anyway, you're going to fill a cocktail shaker with ice, add the vodka, blue curacao, elderflower, and the lemon. Shake well until chilled. Strain into a tall glass filled with fresh ice, top with sparkling water and the dash of bitters. And then you garnish with a sprig of rosemary to represent the earthy herbs and flowers of the retreat, and sprinkle with dried butterfly pea flower petals. Wow. For an extra layer of color that slowly changes the drink's shade, a nod to Masha's secretive dosing.
Ooh. Dun,
so,
dun, dun.
Right before we signed on, you had said that you thought you heard about 9 Perfect Strangers. What do you feel like you've heard about it, if anything?
No, then I went and I looked at the pictures from like the show and I was like, no, maybe that's not what I thought it was.
Sad. So guess what? I'm going to get to tell you about it. So you'll find out.
But now I think I am going to watch it. So
yeah. So it's an American drama television series based on the 2018 novel of the same name, 9 Perfect Strangers, by Lane Moriarty. I did read the novel. The show, the first season is based strongly on the novel. The second season is kind of just taking the main character, Masha, played by Nicole Kidman, and expanding upon her issues. I do believe Lane Moriarty consulted on the second season, but there's not a book associated with the second season. So as I was saying, main character is Masha Dimitrichenko. She's a Russian founder of a wellness resort called Tranquillum House. At least that's in season 1. Season 2, we get a little bit of, we're not sure if it's backstory or forward story, but I'll get into that. I'm going to cover both seasons just briefly. So in season 1, Masha runs this retreat where people go for healing, wellness. You know, one of those, frou-frou-y retreats we hear about all the time. But the folks who show up all have some strange things in common. And we come to find out across the season that they were specifically selected to come to this retreat at this time because Masha's doing some experimentation with psilocybin and dosing her patients because they all have some sort of trauma.
Right.
We come to find out throughout the season. So season 1, wonderful cast of characters. There's Melissa McCarthy. She plays Frances Welty, who's a struggling novelist. She's got some difficulty in her both professional and personal career. And the whole book is basically written from Frances's perspective about this experience at Masha's retreats. They kind of roll it into the show as in when season 2 happens, they're like, oh, well, Frances helped make Masha famous, and now this is where Masha's going with that fame. So they do tie it in really nicely. Number 1, if you've seen the show, Melissa McCarthy's wardrobe, chef kiss, phenomenal.
Oh, yeah?
Because honestly, let's be real, Hollywood doesn't always dress fuller figured women well. Her every scene on point, gorgeous clothing. So Melissa McCarthy was rocking it every episode. So other cast of characters there is Lars Lee, who is a reporter who comes to the retreats kind of
in disguise to explore what's really going on there. But when we come to find out he does have some trauma of his own. Then we meet Jessica Chandler. She's played by Samara Weaving, who I'd never seen before, but she does a really, really good performance. So if you ever hear of her, see her work, check her out. She's a really good actress. But she's a social media influencer, exactly what it sounds like. Perfect body, perfect hair, perfect, look. And her husband, named Ben, he is a lottery winner. And so basically they're just balling out. They got all this money. They're just using it wherever. And then some of their trauma comes up. Essentially, this was not Ben's dream to be rich. He just wanted to kind of be like a run-of-the-mill guy, have his own little business, do his own thing. And the wealth really kind of threw his world for a loop. Everyone assumes that Jessica's just with him because she's an influencer and wants his money, but they actually have quite a long backstory where they'd been together for some time before his wealth. And he did pay for some of his plastic surgery, but there's a really touching scene where he says to her, I loved you before your nose job. I loved you for who you are before all of this outside stuff.
Aww.
And that really helps her do some of her own healing about her own self-image. Then there is the Marconi family, played by Michael Shannon. Sorry, they're not in order. Grace Van Patten, who you've definitely seen before. Mm-hmm. She's been on a lot of stuff. And she looks a little bit like, I'm blanking on her name, young actress, dark hair. She's been in a lot of stuff. This is not helpful to you, so I'll just move on. So it's this family, mother, daughter, father, and they come because we soon find out that the son, who is the daughter's twin, took his own life. And so they're coming to kind of hopefully get this wellness and move past their family trauma. Then there is Yao, played by Manny Jacinto, which if you have watched The Good Place, you know Manny Jacinto.
Yes.
Yes. I love him. And this is such a different role for him. So it's really kind of cool to see him in this and love him just as much. Then there is, it's a pretty big cast. Bobby Cannavale, who you've definitely seen before. He plays a former, essentially NFL football player who developed a drug addiction after an injury. So developed an opioid addiction. Then his life really went downhill after that. So all these folks, they go to this retreat, which they think is going to be about healing and wellness. Oh, wait, I forgot. Oh, Regina Hall is in it, and she's a very important character. So basically, she plays Carmel, who is a single mother of 4 children. Her husband left her for a younger woman. And that comes up very importantly later, so I'm glad I didn't forget about her. There's some other employees and people there, but those are really the main cast of characters for season 1. So all these folks are there, and they're going to this wellness retreat, and part of it is they have these individual sessions with Masha. And as Masha is doing her individual, essentially therapy with them without being an actual therapist, she's kind of collecting data on this secret experiment that she's doing. We come to find out through the course of season 1 that Masha has trauma of her own. Her daughter was killed in a car accident when she was about 8. And ever since then, Masha's really struggled with moving forward in her life. There's another part in the movie where we find out that Masha was the victim of an assault at one point and was shot and almost died. And that was when she kind of changed into this more wellness guru. Before that, she was like hard-headed kind of bitch corporate CEO. And then after this near-death experience, she turned it around because, as she claims, during her near-death experience, she was reunited with her daughter. And so that's really key, because why she's dosing these people with psilocybin is that she has this theory that with the right dosing, people can be reunited with their past loved ones.
So similar to what we'll talk about on our psychic episode.
Similar. Yes.
We mentioned, that's something that, kind of opens your mind type of thing.
But this is a little bit more intense because Masha is working on this assumption that once that initial reuniting occurs, that lost loved one stays with you. So she's essentially trying to get her daughter back for good, not just, I'll make peace and she'll go move on. She's like, no, I want my child back now all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what's really driving all of this experimentation. It is alluded to more in season 1. They go more in depth in season 2, where she didn't just come up with this idea off on her own. She was involved in some research and some similar wellness retreats in Europe prior to this, but this is her own, Tranquillum House is her own deal she's running here. So a lot of stuff happens in season 1, but one of the most touching scenes, I would say, is when the Marconi family is out in the middle of the forest because they've all been dosed, and Dad's been dosed a little bit too much. So he's really feeling it. He's kind of like wandering, and they're chasing after him, trying to get him to calm down, and he's hallucinating, and he starts to see his son, and somehow both the mother and the daughter also see the son too. So they kind of have like a family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very touching, where essentially there's throughout, the mom is talking about a lot of guilt that she has about her son's suicide. And we come to find out her guilt is not unfounded. He was taking an asthma medication, which one of the side effects was suicidal ideation. And she knew that that was a side effect, but she didn't tell anyone about it. And she didn't tell the son about it because she figured, oh, it's just a side effect. Like, it's not going to happen to him. It's not going to happen. But then, of course, when he then commits suicide via hanging himself with a belt that mom had just purchased for him.
Oh.
She then has all of this guilt. She's blaming herself, and she's not really necessarily sharing it all with the rest of her family. So they don't actually find this out until the son comes back for their little reunion and explains to them what happened. So then there's a lot of antagonism between the mother and the father and the daughter, because this is her fraternal twin. So she's not only lost her brother, she's lost her other half
of her. Yeah.
Yeah. And she talks about how she's felt lost without him. And it happens to all coincide on her birthday. So she's like, this is my first birthday without my twin. Like, I don't know how to have a birthday without him.
Right.
And so it's actually a very sweet scene, seeing how this sort of dosing can help people have these healing experiences. But then it's also kind of like, is this actually happening, or is this what Masha is interpreting it as happening? Because they're filming it. And so you see the family members talking to the son, but we don't know what the son is saying. We don't know what they're getting out of that, but she's making this assumption that it's helping. There's also another part with Carmel where we come to find out over the course of many, many episodes that the younger woman that her husband left her for was Masha.
Ooh.
And she purposely went to the retreats with the intent to kill Masha.
Wow.
And we come to find out that she was the one who had shot Masha years earlier. Yes.
Okay.
What we also come to find out through this is actually really important to what I'm going to talk about later, is that Carmel has some mental health issues. And so if you have mental health issues, psilocybin is contraindicated. You should not be taking this if we know that you're already experiencing difficulty with reality testing, psychotic episodes, things like that. And then there's a scene at one point where Masha puts it together because she doesn't initially know. And then she starts kind of researching and she's like, oh shit, I slept with this woman's husband. And so Carmel gets really upset with her. And there's this big confrontation, kind of dangerous scene. And Masha basically says, like, I forgive you for shooting me. Like, I get it. You were justified. I would have done the same thing. And then that helps Carmel kind of take it down, calm down. There's also another really confusing scene where basically everyone's dosed. They all get locked in a sensory deprivation chamber. It has like the little pod. They're not actually in the sensory deprivation, but like there's the pods in the chamber. So they're locked in the room that has the pods. And they are tricked into thinking that the building is on fire and that they're going to die. Where it's all just another thing to test their reality, test how they will react when dosed during these situations. So basically at the end of this whole thing, one of the staff escapes, calls the police because she's like, things are going too wrong. Oh, at one point, the mother of the family, she almost jumps off a cliff because she's so high and so in her grief. So things are definitely going wrong. So one of the staff members leaves and she goes to call the police, and then the police come. And by this point, everyone feels like this was a miracle. So no one wants to report Masha. So that's how season 1 ends, essentially with the police coming to investigate and no one's going to rat on her. And what happens at the end of season 1 is actually kind of funny. So Frances writes her book, becomes a best-selling author again. So her life is all good. She actually ends up developing a relationship with Tony. That was the football guy. His backstory, pretty basic. He got injured, got addicted to opioids, and then accidentally killed someone in a bar fight because of the roid rage. Or I don't remember. Maybe he didn't kill someone. He seriously injured someone, though. And so he has a lot of guilt about that. His dosing helps him work through that. Him and Frances have a little love connection, which is adorable. And then that couple, the influencer and the lottery winner, they end up buying Tranquillum Retreat from Masha because she has to go into hiding. Because there's all this other technical stuff that people are trying to get her for, even though these patients will not report her. So Masha goes into hiding, Frances and them get together. The Marconis kind of just go and move on with their life. And then the reporter ends up writing a piece on the miracles of the dosing. So he initially goes there to kind of turn on her and then is going along with her for the whole thing. So that's season 1. Season 2 is kind of, like I said, semi-backstory, semi-forward story, where essentially we see where Masha got this idea from this other retreat, which is, I believe, in Switzerland. Let me find this.
Everything fancy is in Switzerland. It sounds
well. The first episode
right.
is called Zaberwald, so it's either Switzerland or Germany or somewhere, but it's very snowy, so I'm assuming it's Switzerland, maybe Austria. I don't know, but it's in another country. You see that Masha is running another retreat with a bunch of new people. They all also have trauma and things going on. Very interesting cast of characters. One guy, he's a former children's like puppeteer, kind of like the guy who played Elmo, who lost his career when he like yelled at an extra one day, but like it was all caught on film, where he was like screaming at like somebody, you know, on set, and it got caught on film and they kind of canceled him. Another person, so Christine Baranski, who we all know, she plays a very rich woman who secretly has ALS, and she's hiding it from her daughter Imogen, who is also there, and she is played by Annie Murphy.
Okay.
So some big names on this one. And then other characters, basically, again, everyone's got their trauma. Everyone's trying to work through it. And again, Masha, she's really not doing things up and up, because so supposedly she does know that Victoria, that's Christine Baranski, has ALS, but she still doses her. And then she ends up having a seizure and almost dies. And it's a whole thing.
Lovely.
Yes. There's also this fascinating character, Agnes, who's a former nun. And we come to find out that she quits being a nun because she experienced her own trauma, where she was like working at these camps in a war zone where basically new mothers or pregnant women were coming in for help from the nuns to deliver their babies. And she watched multiple women die because the head nun would not give them treatment. So she's got a lot of trauma about that, a lot of faith crises about that.
So, a little quick side note, just nun related.
Nun related. Love a nun related story.
My great-grandmother left the nunhood to marry a traveling salesman, and if she didn't do that, I wouldn't exist. So
interesting.
That's about all the story I know.
In fact, apparently my grandmother wanted to be a nun, and she just didn't do it. So
you wouldn't exist if that didn't, you know, she didn't change her mind. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Henry Golding is also in this, who, hottie, love him. He's a cutie patootie. Sorry, I got distracted thinking about him. So he is the son of a very, very wealthy businessman, billionaire, who he's going to this retreat because he wants to connect with his father. They've always had kind of a contentious back and forth relationship. And we come to find out that his father, David, who is also at the retreat, is Masha's former lover and the father of her daughter that died.
Oh, wow.
So basically, Masha specifically picked David to come because she wants him to also reunite with their daughter, which we see in the first episode. Her daughter's still with her after her own dosing. So she's still seeing her daughter, who has passed, through her own dosing. And we come to find out during this season that she's developed a device that gets implanted in your chest that is continuous delivery of psilocybin to continue seeing your past loved one. And so now all these people are trying out this continuous device. Half of them don't even know what it's for. They just know they signed up for this and it's some sort of wellness thing. So season 2, lots of stuff happens, lots of craziness, because that's what Masha loves to do, is craziness. But at the end, essentially, she blackmails David into bankrolling her next project. So that's where we move forward.
Where we're going. Okay.
Exactly. What are we going to talk about psychology? What do you think? I've talked a little bit about it before in a prior episode.
Psychedelics, psilocybin?
Yes. So I'm going to talk about psychedelics, but I'm specifically going to talk about how they're used in treatment of trauma, because that's really what the core of all of this is. And so I had talked about psilocybin and other psychedelics on our frog licking episode. I don't remember what number that was, but we'll get
number 20, because that was the special episode. This is a special episode brought to you by Medical Media Mixer.
Episode 20.
Yeah, episode 20, because we said
like an after school special.
It was a special number, and we were like, I did the caffeine, the Jessie, and you did the toad licking.
Yes, it was like an after school special. So I covered a little bit more of general psychedelics in that, more specific to psychedelic animals, but I did touch on psychedelic plants as well. But here, psilocybin is a specific type of mushroom, also called magic mushrooms.
Yes.
And it is naturally derived. So it is a mushroom that does grow in the wild in certain climates, and it does have hallucinogenic properties. And so in 9 Perfect Strangers, that's the main thing that we see Masha learning to grow and harvest. So in season 2, we see her actually in the forest harvesting for those mushrooms. There's a special name for mushroom hunting. I forget what it's called.
Yes, they have the pigs do it.
Yeah. There's a special name for it. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah. So you see her in the forest picking them, but then you also see later on that they have kind of an indoor arrow garden of sorts who's growing these psychedelic mushrooms as well. And in the lab, they're trying to make them more powerful. So they are genetically modifying them in some way. But a psilocybin mushroom is a specific type of mushroom. I'm not going to go into all the genuses and phylums and all of that, but it's a specific type of mushroom. Although, strangely enough, the picture on the Wikipedia page, I'm like, I've eaten one of those, but I think they just look like a general mushroom.
That's the thing is mushrooms can have, like, you got to get a book if you want to go foraging. I mean, it's one of the things, but that's not the word.
Foraging. That's the word.
Is that the word you were looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Foraging. Yes. But if, you better have a book to know like the ins and outs, because you might get something like poisonous or deadly, even other plants, berries, anything. You better know what you're doing before you start picking stuff.
Well, and I'm not going to cover it too much, but there's a really interesting documentary on Netflix about mushrooms in general, not just psychedelic mushrooms, about fungi and mushrooms, and about how they grow. And they actually grow underground for miles.
Yes.
And kind of have like a network. It's very, very cool.
It is.
And apparently during COVID, that was one of the extracurricular activities a lot of people took up. If they weren't making sourdough, they were foraging for mushrooms. It became a really big thing that people were doing.
Have you ever seen there's a specific type of mushrooms that grow in a circle? Like it looks like they call it like a fairy circle or something. I feel like I've seen that.
Do they grow out like around the trunk of a tree in a circle?
It could be just anywhere. I think just in a circle in the grass, but like it's in a perfect circle. And it must be because of like that connection, but it's like it literally feels like fairies did it.
Yeah. It's very cool. Mushrooms are very cool, not just the ones that get you high. So there's psilocybe is a specific type of genus of mushroom, and there's 116 species of that genus. So all of those have some sort of psychedelic properties. But there's very specific ones. I'm not going to go too in depth, just kind of saying like it is a natural thing that grows in the wild. In theory, it's something that you could find if you went foraging, but bring your book. Make sure you're picking the right thing. Yeah. Because also some mushrooms are toxic, not necessarily hallucinogenic. So you want to make sure you're taking the same thing, the thing that you're looking for. Also, mushrooms, if you like them, they're just delicious. So go for it.
See, people, I think that's a love or hate thing. Mushrooms.
I love mushrooms.
I
love
do
them.
too. I enjoy mushrooms, but that's the mushrooms, olives, pickles. I think those are the same
That's
people.
True. Yeah, it's a texture thing.
Them.
It's definitely a texture thing. I believe it. So, and a lot of people now are probably seeing things like mushroom coffee, mushroom tea. So it is being more incorporated into a lot of things. Those are not the psychedelic kind we're talking about.
Right.
Those are other types of mushrooms because they do have a lot of positive health effects, mushrooms and fungi in general. So the emotional effects of psychedelic mushrooms are similar to other psychedelics like LSD, where you get a trip or a strong experience. So it's going to be a definitive amount of time where you're experiencing the effects of it, and then it leaves your system relatively quickly thereafter. Usually it's lasting a couple of hours to, I believe, a couple of days at max. And it depends on not just the mushroom, the strength of it, the age of it, how big it is, how much you're taking, but also your own metabolism of how quickly it's moving through your system, how you're going to react to it. As we said in our frog licking episode, you got to be careful because everyone has different reactions to any type of psychedelic. So you could have a bad trip where you're getting that uncomfortable feeling, but most people tend to have a more pleasant experience with psychedelics. But it can cause heightened anxiety. It can cause physical symptoms like nausea, vomiting. And then some of those hallucinations can be very difficult to separate from reality. So we've all kind of seen it on TV where it's like the sky, like it's all wavy and people don't know what's going on and they're laughing. That's kind of the theatrical experience of it. But you can also have panic, you can have pain, you can have psychosis. So make sure that if you are to imbibe in this, make sure that you are with someone safe in a safe place.
Right. Like usually they say to have like a person there who's not taking part in that.
Yep. You should have a buddy with you.
Yeah.
So the median lethal dose, known as the LD50 of a psilocybin, is 280 milligrams per kilogram. I don't know what any of that means, but I just read it to you. It's probably based on your weight and then
yes, per kilogram. So
that's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes, basically take your weight divided by 2.2, and that's how many kilograms you are, and then how many milligrams.
It's a lot of non-American math right there. We're not doing kilos here.
What's interesting is, I calculate medication doses in kilograms, but I think in pounds and inches.
I was going to say, you've seen us when we're like, is it ounce or milliliter? We don't know.
Yeah. Well, see, but meds I do in mLs. But I know there's approximately 260 mLs in a cup, because when you're in a nursing home and you're saying, give them, this much water or water, like give them this,
that much to go with it. Yeah,
your brain has to cross calculate.
Yeah. So apparently Wikipedia tells me that from a toxicological profile, it would be incredibly difficult to overdose on psilocybin mushrooms, given the primary toxin compound. So I'm assuming it means it ingests and moves through you so quickly that it's
and probably
harder.
The amount that you'd have to have is pretty enormous.
You'd have to eat like a bushel.
A lot.
I don't know what measurement a bushel is, but I've heard it before. And then, so you can, as I said, have those side effects that are more exactly what I just called it, side effects. I don't know where I'm going with this, where you may not die from the psilocybin, but from the effects of it. So in 2003, a 27-year-old man was found dead in an irrigation canal due to hypothermia because he was so high and then he was laying out there for a while.
Right.
In his bedroom, they found 2 cultivation pots of psilocybin mushrooms. So apparently you can grow them in your bedroom.
Wow.
I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying that's what this fellow did. But some other more realistic threats instead of lethal overdose are having serotonin syndrome. So do you know anything about that? Can you tell our listeners?
It can be very dangerous, but essentially it's sort of like everything in your body going fast. So your heart rate goes fast, your blood pressure can rise. It can be caused by interactions in some medications. So there are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but there are other medications that can add to that, like certain migraine medications that plus that antidepressant can cause serotonin syndrome because it's 2 things that elevate serotonin. Or the pain medication tramadol, I believe, also can do that in addition to an SSRI, or I think trazodone as well, and buspirone. So all these things added together, sometimes they're things that you can use together, but they're additive effects and can cause, and more likely in the younger or the older patients who their tolerability to these might be lower, and they would be more likely to get that serotonin syndrome.
Is it similar to what I talked about when you're weaning off of benzos, that worry, or is that a little bit different?
Different. No, this is very different. Yeah.
Okay. So legal status. In 2020, Oregon became the first U.S. state to decriminalize psilocybin and legalize it for therapeutic use. However, selling it without being licensed can still get fines or imprisonment. 2022, Colorado legalized consumption, growing, and sharing for personal use. Other jurisdictions have decriminalized it, including Ann Arbor and Detroit in Michigan, only those towns, Oakland and Santa Cruz in California, East Hampton, Somerville, Northampton, and Cambridge in Massachusetts, and Seattle and Washington, D.C. So in New Jersey, as of right now, not legalized for use. However, buying spores of mushroom species containing psilocybin online in the U.S. is legal in all states except for Georgia, Idaho, and California. I'm not telling you to grow your own, but I'm telling you it's not illegal to grow your own. That's what I'm telling you.
Right.
Again, everything we want to be safe with. So if this is something that you want to grow just for curiosity, you're making sure that you're knowing who is touching them, using them, trying them. You don't want to accidentally dose someone or have someone get sick over these things.
Or a pet or a child. Yeah,
exactly. A pet. You're right. A pet, a child, anyone who can get into these things. I don't think that you should be growing this at home for funsies, but it's not illegal to do that. So psilocybin in general, I'm not going to go over all of the deep dive of drug interactions because we did a little bit of that in the last episode. But as I said, it is a hallucinogenic. It was previously used ritualistically in pre-Columbian Mexico, but now it's not used as much. It's less attracted. It's less attached to that more tribal medicine. That's more other natural medicines, not necessarily psilocybin. And then in 1958, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann isolated psilocybin and psilocybin, which is a derivative of psilocybin, from the mushrooms, and then started being able to create it in a lab and then sell it for psychedelic therapy. So that's a wonderful segue into what psychedelic psychotherapy is. So I talked a little bit about this last time, but psychedelic psychotherapy is when you are taking a psychedelic knowingly in a therapeutic setting, essentially with a sitter and a psychiatrist. So you want an MD there and then someone who's just going to sit and monitor you. And you are taking it to work through essentially past trauma, but you can also work through other things. So this is now a therapeutic psychedelic experience where it's purposeful and you're followed. And it's not just getting high for funsies. You're doing this in a therapeutic setting. And then you're going to have a debriefing episode after to go over what that experience was and what that means in relation to what your therapy is addressing. So it all kind of started back in, let me find the date, 1962 at Harvard. The Harvard Psilocybin Project.
I've heard of this one.
Yes. So it was conducted by Timothy Leary, Richard Alpert, Aldous Huxley, David McClellan.
Wait, Aldous Huxley. Is he not an author?
These are names that we've heard before.
I was like, wait a second.
Yes, you've heard Timothy Leary before. I always confuse him with the comedian of a similar name. Not him. But these are all people who are academics, true academics who have written books out there. They were involved in this study. And then 2 graduate students were also working on a project to isolate and find the therapeutic effects for mescaline, which is also another type of psychedelic. And so it started in the 1960s. This was not underground at this point. This was a study run by Harvard. They knew what they were doing. They were researching this stuff. And essentially what started to happen was the government started looking at things a little bit more. The Swiss-based company Sandoz, who does a lot of pharmaceuticals, they wanted to know more about administration and experiences with psilocybin. So they were consulting with Leary and Alpert on this stuff. And so they did a test group. The first test group was 38 people of various backgrounds, and they were in soothing environments where they were conducting the study. Each subject chose their own dosage, so they got to be part of, how much am I going to take? How long is this trip going to last? So I think that can kind of mess with the research side of things.
You're not controlling things then,
Exactly. But I think that was part of it, is like, if this is going to work through a very personal therapeutic experience, the person needs to be involved. So I understand what their thinking was behind it, but it's not necessarily a true clinical study, which is going to have controls, and it's not going to be as randomized as this was. And so the lead researchers, Leary and Alpert, also decided to take the psilocybin during it.
Jump in on the study. And
I'm hoping they weren't taking it while they were working with others. I don't know the details here.
Recreationally, I'm sure.
So the study lasted some time, and by the end of the study, 95% of the subjects declared that their psilocybin experience had changed their lives for the better.
Okay.
So this is where the controversy starts. If we're looking at things, this is when there started to be some political stuff going on, and there's a whole documentary about this. I think it's called How to Change Your Mind. There's also a book of the same title, but the documentary is on Netflix. And it talks about the history of psychedelics in general, not just psilocybin, but talks about how at that same time, late 70s, early 80s, there was just a lot of other drug culture happening, cocaine coming in from South America and from Mexico and things like that. And so the government was getting involved in regulating. And that was when they decided to include psilocybin and these psychedelics in their scheduling of drugs. And that's really when all that drug scheduling started.
Okay.
And so right away, it was kind of said, no, we're not going to do this. Even though these studies, even though some of their research was a little questionable, they were showing positive therapeutic side effects, positive therapeutic effectiveness. But this stuff was not fully legal, quote unquote, in the United States. Mescaline and peyote were illegal, but these other medications, they weren't even on kind of the radar. Is this illegal? Should this be registered? Shouldn't? Right. And so then these people are doing this research. Harvard started to get involved and say like, hey, we need to like calm it down. And both Leary and Alpert then kind of used their advocacy of psychedelics. They were kind of a big part of the hippie counterculture then of, plug in and drop out or something like I'm forgetting the phrase.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And this was around the same time as the war was ending. There were a lot of people who were pro-peace. This whole hippie movement is all happening at the same time. Even though these things are separate issues, it was all converging at the same time, which was leading to eventually the government deciding to schedule these substances and make them illegal for some time. So that's the background, the emerging field of psychedelic psychotherapy. So I'm just going to hit the highlights. It's been shown to have some effectiveness in mood disorders and post-traumatic stress disorder, specifically for people who have been treatment resistant otherwise. So this isn't going to be your first line of treatment for most folks. This is going to be people who have tried intensive psychotherapy, have tried many, many medications, and who are still having that intractable symptoms of PTSD or mood symptoms. And this kind of falls in line a little bit with what we've talked about very briefly about ketamine as well. Right. Treating the same sort of thing. Ketamine is also considered a type of psychedelic.
Right.
Route of administration is a little bit different. There's a lot of different stuff going on there, but same end result. Now, the problem is, and we've briefly talked about Matthew Perry, is you're not supposed to be using a psychedelic on an addiction. Yeah. And so because it can itself become addictive. And so this is, again, making sure that you're getting the therapy in a place where it is approved, it is monitored, it is on the up and up, because there is a lot of underground work going on. That being said, a lot of that underground work is from those original, like kind of grandfathers of this field. So they're still going through it with this intention of this being a therapeutically helpful thing for people. You just want to make sure you're getting it from the right person, that you're working with the right people. Let's see. MDMA is another one. That is another, what we call an empathogen. So what I love about this is there's some very, very small studies on using MDMA in folks on the spectrum because it opens up your interpersonal connectedness with people. It kind of gets rid of some of that difficulty that people have connecting. It is known to promote attachment, trust, empathy, interpersonal connectedness. It's more of one of those happy euphoria drugs.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of research on that, not a ton of it. I can imagine because the N of people on the spectrum who are willing to take this is so small, we're probably not going to have those large generalizable studies, at least not right now anyway. Especially not in our current political environment. That's all I'm going to say about that. DMT, mescaline, psilocybin, LSD, we've talked about those before, all psychedelics, but all essentially this class is generally well tolerated by most people and a relatively low risk, especially when used in those clinical settings. There was a larger clinical trial of psilocybin with major depressive disorder. There were no serious medical events, and only one person had a transient elevation in blood pressure. Mm-hmm. And then some people, about 33%, said they had limited headaches. No cardiovascular or neurological events. Some of the risks were nausea and vomiting, but again, that might have to do with the dosage, the amount, what you've eaten before, your own reactivity, stomach sensitivity, things like that. The contraindication, as I was alluding to before, is having a personal or first-degree relative with a history of psychosis in any form, even if it's a singular incident. We don't want to be giving someone a hallucinogen because of that, because in theory, a hallucinogen is changing your perception. So if you already have a perceptual disorder, you don't want to make that even worse. And then beyond clinical trials, we know that people have used it as a party drug. It's not supposed to be that way. I'm sure people have fun with it, but there are true effects that can be really healing for people. There's a documentary, I'm blanking on the name, I'm a terrible person, I'll look it up, but it specifically follows people, combat veterans, who are having severe PTSD from their combat and have taken, I believe it's psilocybin in the one I'm thinking of, and had literally life-changing, like going from one day where can't even leave their house to after, I believe it's a 4-week course, it might be a little bit longer than that, 6-week course of treatment, of almost being entirely back to baseline, if not better. Like I remember there was one veteran who's like, I didn't feel like this before my trauma. Like, this is great. So it can be very healing for some people, but it's still under research. Even in the state of New Jersey here, there are some FDA-approved trials going on. So at least the FDA at some point was open to researching this stuff. We know that there is a lot of political sway with the FDA and any of those organizations, but as recently as in the last 3 to 4 years, there have been continued studies on this to see the overall effect for things like, I said, depression. There's one about end-of-life anxiety and depression, which is really interesting. So in treating cancer, there is, and a lot of these are double-blind placebo trials. Like, these are actual, true, real studies looking at things, not just somebody dosing and be like, I feel great. But like I said, mostly PTSD. On that one, a lot of it is combined with manualized therapy. If you're doing a randomized double blind, someone's getting a placebo, so you may not be getting the good stuff, and you'll just find out when you show up and try it. But it looks like the big studies right now are more PTSD and major depressive disorder that has not been responsive to other therapies. So that's what I've got. Like I said, I wasn't going to go too in depth. Let me check my one other link. And like I talked about last time, there are full institutes who help people in their training to become a psychedelic psychotherapy practitioner. Essentially what that means is you're doing therapy with someone while they're high. You're not taking it, you're not doing it. But but interestingly enough, some of these places, they offer retreats where you as a practitioner can go and take it yourself just to know.
To know what you're, I get that.
I would be fascinated. I would love to do that at some point. There's a really great institute in Amsterdam that has been doing that training for some time. There's one in the US who I believe they're doing it in California. Yeah, I did just say California has it legalized. So there is training institutes out there, but it's not widely accepted right now. But it's definitely growth in the field.
Yeah, I think mostly in culture, we think of that hippie time period. That's definitely... And then definitely I know people who, when we were in high school and college, definitely, took shrooms, as they would say.
Yeah.
For sure.
People do it now.
Yeah. In my place in life, I'm not hearing about it so much, but I'm sure in that, college age, it's still happening in that way. But I think it is promising. Especially with the veterans, I think that's really interesting, the kind of recovery they had, because those are the things that all the therapy and all the meds, like, what do you do when that hasn't gotten you there? Like, why not? Why not try something?
Well, and people are probably wondering, like, what are the effects of it? And so there's one study, it'll be linked in the show notes, that says that after the trip, Brain activity returns to normal, but it seems like there's almost a reset of the connection between the hippocampus, which holds all of your memories, and then just the way that your brain works. So those memories that were intrusive or traumatic or bothersome, they don't have that same weight anymore. You're not forgetting those things. It's not like an amnesia pill, but it's helping you almost reprocess. And that's actually one of the words that we use when we're doing the psychedelic psychotherapy is reprocessing of that trauma in a way that's then helping you reset your reaction to that trauma. Which can be really, really helpful if someone's tried everything else and it's not working. And then that study is really interesting because the controls took methylphenidate. So they took ADHD medication because apparently it also can impact that same neural pathway, but in a different way.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's probably more of like the focus versus the memory, but we do know that focus, attention, and memory are intimately interconnected, as I've talked about on other episodes. I feel so smart saying these things.
You sound super smart.
I'm trying. I feel
the brain to me is like the great unknown, you know? Like,
right.
I can tell you about strokes and seizures and tumors, but it is the great unknown. It really is.
Yeah. There's an interesting study said that they gave psychedelics to mice. I don't know why.
Because
I mean, I'm sure I know why, but still, I'm just thinking like, why are we getting the mice high? But apparently they found that their behavior reverted to behavior of juvenile mice, which helped them relearn things.
Huh.
So it's not like they were like immature, like baby mice running around going crazy. They were just able to learn better because their brains were almost kind of like reset.
Yeah. Interesting.
So really interesting studies going on there. And then, like I said, there's still a lot that we need to move forward. A lot of this is heavily regulated by our government, so those things can change at any time. I'm not saying good or bad about the government. I'm just saying it doesn't matter. Like, we can have the same president or a different president. If they change the regulations, it's going to change some of this research. So.
Right. Exactly. So,
and, you know, a lot of it too. I think a lot of the regulations, what people don't realize, and this is just for all of pharmaceuticals, a lot of the regulations are financially motivated too.
Of course.
So that was why a lot of these things were scheduled, because of a monetary factor versus actual effectiveness. Not all of them. Some of them are dangerous and we take with caution, but there's a lot of moving parts in why something becomes illegal. And it's not just one thing. And as we've learned, things become illegal at one point and they don't become unillegal until people start pushing forward and doing research.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's really where we are as far as psychedelics right now. We're really doing the research to justify unscheduling those things.
Yeah. I mean, we've done now 2 psychedelics, so now you got to do cannabis next. I think it's
not a psychedelic, girl, but yes.
No, I said we've done psychedelics. Now we need to do something else that also hits like people using it for anxiety or sleep or whatever.
I mean,
so
you can do it too. People use it for appetite. People use it for lots of stuff.
You do all the brainy stuff. You do all the head.
I do all the head stuff. That doesn't sound good. Hey, I'm single. I do all the head stuff. Sorry. You can't let me have 2 drinks and not make a comment.
Seriously.
Yeah.
My goodness. We're going to have an unchained last call if that's is how we're ending this episode.
That's okay. I'm ready for it. Now I'm hungry for mushrooms.
Would you like me to saute some for you?
Oh, I love a good saute. I just found like a little infographic with different types of like edible mushrooms. I think you were referring to the chicken of the woods.
The chicken of
that grows in a circle.
Circle? Is that the one? I just know it's the fairy circle.
I'm not a big fan of shiitake.
Yeah. And
I can give or take a portobello.
I like on the grill. A nice portobello on the grill is nice. Porcini.
I was going to say, I love a porcini. I love a button.
In like a stew or in like a beef short ribs with some red wine. In the cooking and to drink, both.
Yeah. I didn't know this is what it called, but apparently I like a maitake, which are like those little tiny stringy ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like those too.
So, yeah, eat the mushrooms.
Now everyone knows the mushrooms I like. I'm sorry. Couldn't help it.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's wrap this up so we can get to our last call. Hit us up on Patreon if you want to see more randomness.
Yes. Maybe Tara will make me some mushrooms.
Thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail. Cheers.
That is where all the cayenne is.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Medical Media Mixer podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps others find the show. Want to keep the conversation going? Follow us on social media. We're at Medical Media Mixer Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and on Pinterest, the Medical Media Mixer board.
If you'd like to support the show and help us grow, check us out on Patreon. patreon.com/medical media mixer podcast, and on Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/medical media mixer podcast. If you have a topic idea, feedback, or just want to say hi, send us an email at medicalmediamixer@gmail.com. You can also stream all of our episodes and find more info on our website, medicalmediamixer.podbean.com. We're available on all major podcast platforms, so no matter where you listen, we're there. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep mixing medicine and media.